Now that we've completed on the standards, let's look back what all we have done in the entire semester, right? I think I mean, if you've heard, if you've thought about privacy for the first time, I'm pretty sure there are many, many topics that you heard in this course for the first time ever, right? And I'm also hoping that you would have made some connections with these topics to other topics that you've already learned. One of the biggest skills to have in general is to actually connect dots with the topics that you learn, right? So looking back, we started week one. I'm just rewinding for 10 weeks and then just giving you some quick summary of each of the weeks. I've just taken exactly the same slides from those weeks, and I'm just going to summarize it here. And it's necessary to do the summary also, is because you will see how much we have covered in the last 12 weeks as part of this course. As I had said in the first week, the goal for me for this course was you should be able to list various online privacy concerns, which I'm guessing you will be able to do it right now, and describe different methods used for reducing online privacy concerns. These were the two goals I had set. I hope I was able to achieve it in some sense. Relatively for some of you who may have spent more time outside the content, relatively less if you've just looked at only the content from the deck that we saw in the class. Broadly, the topics that I wanted to cover, which was built on this post conditions, was definitions and forms of privacy, privacy attitudes and awareness, social media privacy, data anonymity, image and location privacy, user behavior and usable privacy, ethics around studying privacy, some different reports that have come out of different projects that have come out where privacy has become a topic, and non-personal data. So we have covered all of them in the deck, in the content. And the question is about some of this can be taken in, for example, data anonymity. I actually took a class during my PhD life just called data anonymity, right? One semester class. Right? So therefore, this is treated like an online privacy 101 course, and just getting to know the topics. And if you're interested in any of them, do delve into detail. This was the first activity I'd given you, asking you to listen to the whole video and see where all the privacy concerns are. A great example of this privacy issues is in this video, which is that the person on the other side, the customer service person, knows absolutely everything about you in terms of your credit card bill payment, in terms of your health records, in terms of your police arrest, in terms of the vehicle that you have, health conditions, right? So that's the level of information that the customer service has, which could, in this case at least, it's intrusive because he just wants to order a pizza, right? Then some theoretical concepts of privacy itself, where we looked at what is the definition of privacy and how privacy topic has evolved over a period of time. Privacy is a value so complex, so entangled in competing and contradictory dimensions, so engorged with various and distinct meanings that I sometimes despair whether it can be usefully addressed at all. Right? So that's one of the definitions of one of the ways by which privacy was looked at. Another common thing that privacy comes into discussion is always this to determine for themselves when, how, and to what extent information about them is communicated to others. And I'm also hoping that over a period of semester, you would have realized your own understanding of privacy is changing. Not just understanding, which is the subject itself, but how you behave, probably how you think of something. Meaning, when you're browsing something, are you doing something different now? Are you being more conscious about who's getting to see it? Have you gone and read the privacy policy, right? If some of those things have happened, I think it'll be super nice. I'll be very happy about it. Each individual is continually engaged in a personal adjustment process in which he balances the desire for privacy with desire for disclosure and communication. So we're just always in this trade-off, right? Trade-off of how information is getting shared, what information is getting shared, who has access to this information, and all of that. These are done by Alan Weston. 4 states of privacy: solitude, intimacy, anonymity, reserve. Again, different forms of privacy. I think week 1 is full about different forms of privacy, different definitions of privacy, all that. Information collection, information processing, invasion, information dissemination, Solovey's privacy taxonomy, where he kind of argues that these are the different ways you can think of actually privacy. These are the places where the expectations of privacy also comes in. Then we looked at this big topic of fundamentalist, pragmatist, non-concerned, privacy indices that Alan Weston had come up with, and a report around it. I sincerely hope that some of you will go and look at some of these reports, which is referred in this course, because I think these reports give you a great insight on what these topics are, whereas I was only summarizing some of the things that has been discussed in these papers and these reports. Fundamentalist being only 25% of the US population, pragmatist being 60%, unconcerned being 15%. And this summary that I'm doing, or looking back that I'm doing, will also help you to think about the final exam, I guess, the topics that may be interested in probing as part of the exam. Then lots of privacy studies have been done. Lots and lots of privacy studies across the world has been done in terms of both quantitative, qualitative, lab studies, all of that. Very few studies have been done in India. So this is one of the studies that has been done in India, looking at the attitudes and awareness of Indian citizens across various topics, various dimensions, all of that. Some questions has been also sort of say taken directly from Alan Weston, so we could actually compare the numbers. This is one of the largest privacy study that's been done also. Week 1, we delved in detail about the OECD principles and FTC principles. And this is necessary because I think from week 1, we've been following this topic in different ways, right? Collection limitation, data quality, purpose specification, use limitations, security safeguards, openness, individual participation, and accountability. I'm guessing by now you should know all of these words by heart. What does it mean? An abridged version of OECD principles is notice and disclosure, choice and consent, data security, data quality and access, recourse and remedies. Right. So all of this will kind of capture everything that is there in OECD also. That was week 1. I think week 1 was very effective in terms of just getting all the new concepts done as part of week 1 itself. Week 2. Week 2 went on to look at theoretical definitions of privacy, right? So this one is Warren Brandeis' document, which talks about right to privacy. The first ever document which talks about need for privacy and arguing that why privacy is necessary, in what context and everything. Then we looked at Helen's document, Helen's report on contextual integrity, which is, look, privacy cannot be thought of very abstract. Privacy has to be thought of only within a context. So let's bring the context in definition whenever privacy is being discussed. We also spent a lot of time in week 2 on privacy policies, right? Privacy policies, we went around privacy policies of Facebook's, Twitter's and everything, but privacy policies expectation is that they tell us how the company is using the data that they're collecting from us, how they're protecting all the safeguards that we discussed until now. Facebook's privacy policy is here. Facebook's privacy settings, privacy checkup. Facebook has a system where you can go check up what is your privacy sort of say level. Have you set up everything properly? Twitter's privacy policy, Twitter's privacy settings. We also took a stab at NPTEL's privacy policy. I hope some of you reached out to NPTEL also talking about the privacy policies that they have. So this one is another phenomenal study which talks about cost of reading privacy policies, how much money it would take if we get every single U.S. citizen to read the privacy policy of the website that they are accessing. So that was until week 2 what we covered. Now let's see what did we cover in week 3. In week 3, I think we focused primarily on privacy enhancing technologies and privacy invasive technologies that we had, right? So enhancing technologies, I'm guessing that by this time you would have used some of them, like Anonymizer. And why do we need privacy enhancing technologies? To protect our privacy, obfuscation, right? All of that is the needs. And pseudonymization is the examples that I had given earlier about your handles being not really Ponguru but CS Prof on different platforms. So you can you can use anonymizers, or you can use bogus accounts online. 4 of us could use the same account, email address, or Facebook account, or Twitter account. So nobody will know which of us is from the patterns. It's hard to find out who it is actually. Obfuscation, perturbing the data, adding noise. I mean, in anonymization part, we saw these that you can actually share data by adding some small noise, and that can help protect the data. That can help give anonymization for the data. Then one of the big things that we spent a lot of time on was in this TAR, onion routing technique, where you can actually go from point A to point B without people knowing that who's making the request for a given website, for a given service, everything. Right. So I don't know whether any of you have tried running an exit node of Tor, trying to use Tor browser to see how it works, all of that. So I think all of that I would encourage you to try it out. Then we looked at P3P, which is a platform for privacy preferences. And this is a way by which companies can express their privacy policies. You can express your privacy preferences, and therefore some matching could be done at a level where programs could interact with each other to decide whether our privacy preferences is in line with the company's privacy preferences, and therefore the interactions can be smooth, or it is not, and therefore the agent can let us know saying that, look, I think the privacy preferences are not the same, so you should be careful when you're using this website. It's an XML format. It's a W3C standard. So it is a way by which companies are actually expressing their privacy policies. In addition to the normal HTTP request, it has these 3 components. When the request is made, it sends out where the P3P reference file is. Then it asks for P3P policy. P3P policy is given. Then the HTTP page request is made and the page is served. We spent some time on this XML example where we saw real life natural language privacy policy being converted into this XML, right? For example, what is the P3P version, who has access to it, how data may be used, who are the recipients of the data, types of data collected, how long the data can be kept, explanation for the policy, all of that. Given that it's an XML, you can also generate your own tags and use it. Then we saw how Facebook has changed their privacy policies over a period of time. Privacy preferences of the data that they were sharing to public, right? Who gets to access to what information has changed over a period of time in Facebook. This is December 2009. I think in the deck that we had, I showed you all these time stamps. Today I'm just showing you December 2009, and April 2010. This itself shows a lot of difference, right? For example, all of this has become more and more people are getting access to that information. Of course, now if you do this, let's take 2022 March, I'm sure this is going to be very different in terms of less of information is going to be publicly available or available to others, thanks to Cambridge Analytica kind of events. So then we continued looking at some research work around connecting online and offline, particularly this phenomenal work done by Ralph and Alessandro, looking at connecting Facebook users of a particular location on a campus and trying to get their profiles from public by just taking pictures of them. Right. Unidentified sources to identified sources, and Alessandro went on to build a lot of research around social security number and identifying social security number, all of that from building on this work. I think I asked you to look at the TED Talk by Alessandro also. If you have not looked at it earlier, please go look at it. You'll get some very good insights on the problem. This is Latanya Sweeney's work, where two different data sources put together can help us identify people, particularly given these three pieces of information. Users can be identified, was the conclusion that Latanya made by connecting medical data record and voter list. Then we spent a lot of time on techniques to anonymize. K anonymity, L diversity, T closeness, and differential privacy. These are different techniques by which you can anonymize the data, and anonymization itself is necessary because you want to share the data so that others can use it for making useful inferences, but you don't want them to know what data you're sharing it with them. The study that Alessandro did was, can I just take this unidentified source, match.com, and then compare it with some online identifiable sources like Facebook, because they are the user analyst Ponurangam Kumaraguru. Can you actually make these two connects? They were fairly successful in identifying people. And the second one that they did was just taking pictures of people who were walking on the campus, trying to compare, taking this picture, comparing it with Facebook profile pictures, and then getting the user to fill a survey, participant to fill a survey. By the time they are doing this back and comparison, the result shows up, and then they were getting confirmation from the participant itself saying whether these are the users, this is their profile, right? That's what is happening in the study, and they actually showed that they could easily identify users from these platforms. Were matched with their Facebook profile. 38% matched. And this is what does the experiment in real world would mean. Some random picture taken in the campus, you could identify the person actually doing the dance in some program, and right. So this is identify. Even though this picture is not tagged with him, you could actually identify that he's in this picture. The last study that Alessandro, last part of that paper was trying to predict social security number. And then Alessandro went on to do this social security number prediction more work. That was week 3. It looks like every week we have been covering a lot of new topics. So I hope it was sort of say slow enough for people to understand the concepts well. Again, if you are interested in knowing any of these topics more in detail, feel free to reach out. Week 4. Um, week 4, we extended the topic of privacy into a different domain. This is identity resolution. What happens if I actually identify if you're using the same devices? Facebook is being used in 4 devices and it's the same login, same user handle. If I know that, what is the problem? Is there a problem? Can you avoid it? What can happen if they know about it? That's one set of problems. The other set of dimension that we looked at is Ponnurangam, Kumaraguru, Ponguru, and PK are 3 different handles in 3 different platforms. If somebody could put it together and say that all of them are just the same person, how useful is it? Would it be okay for us, for people to identify? Do users even want their handles to be linked like this or no? All of the questions is what we were trying to answer. And then I think putting all this together as identity resolution also has a lot of business value, right? So identifying, saying that PK is the same person as Ponguru, is the same person as Ponnurangam.Kumaraguru, helps ad agencies not to send multiple ads to these 3 different handles, but instead they could just send it to only one, and that's what it is. And that would help, right? And law enforcement agencies also can make use of this identity resolution to say that, okay, criminal victim, all of them are just the same handle, same person, or a different person. Are they chasing 3 different criminals or 1 criminal? All of these conclusions can come up by knowing that these are same set of people. Classical application where the users are using the real name is very different from the social media platforms, right? I mean, you could easily have a Ponnurangam Kumaragaru handle and just legitimately also use it. Whereas in the classical sense, Lori Faith Kainer here, and then Lori Krainer here. So these 3, how can you say that they are the same set of people, same person, right? More the profile is resolved, less the privacy for the user in case if the user wants, right? So if you were having your Insta account different from your name, and you don't want people to actually make connects between your Insta and your Facebook or Insta and your Twitter, and if somebody does that resolution, then I think you're not going to be happy about it, right? So that's the privacy problem. These are examples that I talked about, and these are the features that could be used. I think there are many more features you can think of. So for example, in this case, profile picture, you could compare the name here and the name here, or the user handle. You could compare the text profile here, the text profile here. You could compare the cover picture here and a cover picture in Twitter if it was there. All of these comparisons could be made to check whether it's the same person. And not necessarily that only knowing the current handle, because my current handle is Ponguru, my current handle is pk.profgiri in Insta, right? This is a good example also. That's my Insta handle right now. Earlier I had it as pk80IIITD, right? So, I mean, knowing just this handle, comparing is one. If you have all the handles that I've used in the past, comparison, does that help? I think it is possible that the efficiency of comparison of these handles and finding out the user is actually better if you know the past handles also. That's what this is being. This example shows you here. These are different Twitter handles. These are different Insta handles, and you could see user actually using the same handle, but at different point in time. Also, not necessarily at the same point in time. This is the paper that did this analysis on comparing these user handles with comparing and showing that if you know the handles from the past, it will actually help in resolution. And there was also work done to build a browser plugin extensions where user could be stopped saying that, look, the post that you're going to do or the location that you're going to change, you changed, your Insta said Delhi and your Facebook said Bombay, your Twitter said Hyderabad. If you're going to change one of it to look like other, because you moved and then you wanted to keep the city same, then the system can actually tell you saying, oh, do you really want it to be changed? Do you really want the resolution to be done? Because if you change it to Hyderabad, people can find out that all three accounts are the same. People, system, technologies, right? So this is where this linkability score came in. You could actually find out what is the linkability score if given a user handles in multiple platforms. So this is the example I said where user can be nudged to say that, look, what you're posting is actually very similar to the post that you did in a different platform. So the red, so if you see here, these are, this is red color and this is green color, to show that it's okay to post in green. If I compare the post, because one of the other feature, if you look at this feature list, one of the feature list is the time of the post. Okay. System was built comparing different methods, which method works well, which method, what are the drawbacks in the methods, all of that was done, doing some studies. One of the earlier works on the space, username again, this is another paper. I think these are all papers that we discussed, where the conclusions I've already mentioned now. And then in week 4, we started looking at user behavior. In terms of meaning privacy, as in, so if you look at anonymization, if you look at all of these are methodologies, technologies that you can build where there is no need for user intervention. Whereas sometimes the topic of privacy, you have to keep the users in the loop because they are the ones who are making all these choices. Right. So nudges is an idea where you kind of build. So this is a nudge to just give you an example. This is a nudge saying that, look, it's a red color, it's green color, be careful, go ahead and do it. Nudges is a sort of a topic that's been very well studied for many years now. So I refer to some of the books here, I refer to some of the faculty who are working in this space, and it definitely helps making choices better, and particularly informed choices you can make if the users are nudged. This is Facebook nudges that were developed, picture nudge, timer nudge, sentiment nudge. These are nudges that we saw. User study was done to understand whether these nudges have made any difference in the user, and they showed that these nudges actually help user make better choices. Right, so that's the nudge paper. That's the nudge, and they just did not do only lab study, they also did a field study to show that these nudges actually help users. to make their choices better. So here, if you see, you can generally see that people have actually, participants have gone and either edited their post or canceled the post or went back to privacy settings and edited the privacy settings, which is actually pretty nice, right? So if you can have users, if you can build technology for users to change their behavior, I think that's pretty cool. So that's what we covered in week 4. Now let's look at what did we cover in week 5, right? Again, treat this lecture as not just a summary. I think this is also giving you a sense of what are the different topics that we have seen in the class. I'm sure you're catching up with all the topics that I'm saying now, refreshing your understanding, because some of you will end up actually taking the exam also. Week 5. In week 5, we looked at online, offline privacy, the differences, all of that. We went in quite a lot of detail. I think I spent a lot of time in going through the privacy settings of Chrome, Brave. What are the differences? What are the similarities between these platforms, these browsers, right? And I'm also hoping that when we did this week 5 or now, you will go look at some of these options now and do, so to say, clear cache, autofill not to be kept, all of that. Same thing as Chrome. We also spent some time on JavaScript, how cookies are written, what are cookies, how companies make use of cookies in making recommendations, how you can actually clear cookies so that those recommendations cannot be done by the companies very easily, all of that. And then we spent quite a bit of a time on IRB, Institutional Review Board, which is extremely necessary for research these days. It is mandatory for publications of research in academic journals and conferences. So if you're doing anything with human subjects, please consider having an IRB review from your institute, from some external experts. Find a way to get this IRB. We discussed some studies which had played a phenomenal role in for users to think about IRB. Stanford experiment, Milgram experiment. There are many studies where something has gone bad, something has gone wrong. So funding agencies have stopped funding for universities. And these two studies particularly, also Stanford experiment particularly, has a lot of influence on people thinking about human subjects to be respected. Their preferences have to be respected, all that. I spent a lot of time in going over these, which is IRB application, what to write in the application, what to send it, how should the consent form look like, what a proposal is, what the flyer is. To keep in mind, IRB is just this. IRB is just the floor, not a ceiling, because it's just a bare minimum requirement for doing studies. If you think that there are better things can be done, please feel free to do it, to protect the data of the users, to protect the users itself. Another study that became popular in terms of outcry by participants and others, society, everything, is Indiana University study. This is the list, meaning a small list of research failures where something has gone wrong in terms of universities' research studies, because of which IRB has become more and more important also. What are the things as researchers we should consider making sure that it happens? Respect the participants, give them the right to leave the study, right to stop doing things, whatever they're doing as part of the study, whenever they want. Be kind to them, right? So make sure that participants are not under any stress because of the study. Treat them fairly. Have sort of a diverse set of participants in the study. So there is also a data collection, which is actually pretty good. Data being collected is pretty good. Federal regulations, IRB has become a federal regulation in the US. It is necessary, and therefore, what are the ways by which this is implemented? This is implemented by informed consent, assessment of risk, fair selection of participants. Overall, as researchers, our responsibility is to know how to conduct research ethically. So that's what we covered in week 5. Now let's look at week 6. Week 6, we spent a lot of time on taking this idea of anonymization and seeing what is the anonymization techniques. I motivated the anonymization problem with this AOL example, where the data was shared for research purposes, but users were identified. Then there was this Netflix prize also we saw, where data was shared and users were identified, or at least the recommendations were identified. This particular user got really identified and became more popular also in that sense, I guess. And then the Netflix prize. Netflix prize also, the goal for here was to improve the Netflix's recommendation, and for that they shared some details, but users' ratings were identified, users were identified. That's what the privacy problem for this Netflix prize was. These are the 4 different methods that we saw in the course: K-anonymity, L-diversity, T-closeness, and differential privacy. K-anonymity is a method by which you can actually either suppress a particular part of the data so that the rows cannot be identified, which is what is happening here. It could 45 kgs can become 40 to 50 kgs, or you could put an asterisk and then suppress the data like this. That's K-anonymity. And then when the K-anonymity said is there, L-diversity argued, saying that, look, that's K-anonymity is not enough, we need more. So the argument that the L-diversity made is that the sensitive attributes, which is quasi-identifiers, must be diverse within each quasi-identifier, which is this part, right? Each of every group should be diverse enough. Otherwise, still the user could be actually identified in K-anonymity, even if K-anonymity wasn't implemented. That's our diversity paper. Then came the T-closeness paper, which argued that, look, values within one equivalent class may have semantic similarities, right? Semantic similarities as in gastric ulcer versus gastritis. They're both something relevant to stomach issues. So therefore, it could be re-identified. The rows could be re-identified in that sense. Now, can we actually move beyond the semantic? Was the T-closeness things. Distribution of a sensitive attributes within each quasi-identifier group should be close to their distribution in the entire original database, right? So that's how they measured this T value, and then T value could be depending on how close or how far they are from the original distribution of the data. You could actually say that the data is anonymized or not. That's T-closeness. Then we saw differential privacy. Differential privacy is probably the most popular method by which the anonymization is done now, because I think commercial products have started actually doing differential privacy. For example, Apple does differential privacy in their devices. So that's what we had for week 6. Now let's look at week 7. Week 7, we spent a lot of time on how to conduct studies. Conducting studies is an important aspect of studying privacy. Conducting studies is important in any topic, I guess, in other topics also. But within privacy also, it is necessary to understand. You build a browser plugin, you build an algorithm, you want to test it. You could test it with data directly, but testing it with users also becomes necessary. For example, privacy settings, right? You're part of a Chrome team or you're part of a Brave team later in your career, and you want to test some features that you have built. User study is going to become an important aspect of it. So different methods we saw: cognitive walkthrough, lab study, interviews, survey, focus group discussions, and the real world study in the order of difficulty in some sense. Cognitive walkthroughs, you as a administrator or researcher assume the user and then walk through the steps that the user would do. Interviews, sitting across the table, asking questions, getting responses. Survey, filling a form. Focus group, instead of one-on-one interview, can you get 4 people, 10 people as participants, and you sit and ask questions, get all of them to speak. Lab study, it could be one, it could be many, but let's look at one user. They come and do something, right? In interview, you're just asking questions. In lab study, the user is actually performing some task. You're saying that, oh, can you go create a Facebook post and send it to people of a certain connections that I have only from a location. I want to do a Facebook update to friends only in Hyderabad. Right? How would they go about doing it? Please change the Facebook settings to for so that anybody tags me on a picture, I should review it, and then only it should be allowed that I'm tagged in that picture. If such a task has to be achieved, a user comes into the lab, logs into Facebook, looks at privacy settings, goes around settings, and then makes these choices. That's what a lab study would be. Field trial is the most hardest one, which is in the real world. You don't control anything, put things in the real world and see how it works. For example, Facebook could be doing real world studies, right? Field trials of new features, push it to a particular location and see how users react, and then understand from there, then make it to a few other locations and then to the entire user base. Beta type solutions. Which method and which combination of this that you will use is completely dependent on you as a researcher, administrator who's paying for it. How much money do you have? All that time, resources, participants, questions and goals derive what methods to use. Same topic can be studied in multiple ways, right? You could study the same topic using interview study, lab study, a field study, all of it. So it depends on what you want out of the study. We spent a little bit of a time on questionnaire design. Again, this by itself is a semester-long course. So in this case, I showed only like few slides, which is keep the questions, different types of questions, closed, open-ended, keep the vocabulary simple, keep the questions short. It was more like very prescriptive suggestions I had. Avoid double-barreled questions, avoid hypothetical questions, don't tax respondents' memory, avoid double negatives. Avoid overlapping responses, avoid leading questions, be as clear as possible, keep demographics at last, ask some critical questions in multiple ways so that that, let's take the date of birth or the year of birth or something like that, you ask the same question in different places. So the response has to be same. If the responses are different, then you know that the user is probably not even thinking. The user is probably just clicking on some random buttons. Then we shared a video where students talked about how to review a paper. So I hope that in the process you've learned how to review a paper with these different roles. Just another way of reviewing a paper, but yeah, you could just think of it as a scientific researcher who's reviewing the paper. These are the roles, right? Scientific reviewer, archaeologist, academic researcher, industry practitioner, hacker, private investigator, and social impact assessor. That's how we ended week 7. Week 8. week 8, we spent time on more of this voter privacy, browser extension, all that. So this one is about collecting data from publicly available information, and knowing who you voted for is the information that is the idea that researcher is chasing. The broader idea is called voter surveillance. Data sets are public, people change the user. So this is all in the context of elections, general elections 2019. People change profile names, comparison, hashtag analysis, some background on what it did. But I think the important aspect was to question this, right? Can you actually take Twitter posts, and can you actually tell who I voted for, and connect the information that I posted on Twitter to other information that's publicly available about me, and connect some personally identifiable information. We ended up connecting to voter ID details, which has address, which has personally identifiable information. Can you actually build an intervention for it? Yeah, you could. You could actually say that, oh, whatever you're going to do. So, for example, in this case, it says my vote is for PM @ Narendra Modi, as he has a proven track record into blah blah blah. This tweet is current form. Might leak your age, gender, and address. Click here to know, which is to say that, look, we actually can identify your age from this tweet, because we know that this is the handle that posted, and we could actually get to the voter ID, and therefore from there we could actually figure out your age. So this is without any concerns. Posting it, users are not getting connected with publicly available information. Next was browser extension. Browser extension is also interesting. So many of us use browser extensions for various reasons, right? And here we studied Google Chrome extensions to understand how browsers seem to be taking personal information and sharing it with third party. Right? The spying on us is the topic that was interesting here. What are the consequences that happened because of this browser extension study, right? So it was actually sharing the browsing history, geolocation, IP address, social media access tokens, and it was also seen that the malicious extensions also had higher ratings, and we also saw top developers were also part of development team of these kind of spying extensions. Then we saw places where publicly available information again can be used to put together to create a profile. But in this case, some specific examples we saw where government information that is publicly available on government websites can be put together. These are all different techniques by which you can collect information, PII. The advantages of government source is that it has to be right. And why government makes it public? E-government initiatives, they want to make sure that it's easy to access. Citizens have access to these kind of information in handy. They can know what is happening. They know what details about them the government has all. So this is, I think, earlier in the summary slide I said about dread model, all that. So here is a threat modeling also, which is to understand what are the threats for a particular scenario, right? In this case, user is accessing a website. What are the threats that he or she could have? And these kind of threat modeling becomes very, very important to develop solutions, how to mitigate them. And the privacy standards that we saw in week 12 also connects to this, right? You understand the threats, mitigated by setting up some standards, using the implementation of some standards. This one example we saw. Some of it is hard because I think names like Manish Gupta is hard to put together. Identify who the user is, and many people actually link their profiles through this link tree kind of a platform, which makes it also easier to find out who the users are. Okay. Week 9 was all online tools. You saw how privacy tools can be used. What are these tools? How your user experience can improve by using some of these tools. Week 10. Week 10 was all about mobile phones, publicly available mobile phone numbers, how one can use or misuse those numbers. Some sample posts that we saw, regular expressions, and some infrastructure that was set up to collect these numbers from Facebook, Twitter. Some data that was collected. And this part was also important to understand whether somebody shared the detail or whether others shared the detail. Again, it comes in very handy to know that where the problem is. Individual users were identified, putting the cell numbers that were collected publicly and the data that was collected from the government sources. Individual users were actually identified. Then understanding these privacy issues is one, but also communicating it to the users is also important. Communicating it broadly to citizens is necessary. So infrastructure was set up so that this communication could be done, and then an IVR system was set up. So that some questions could be collected, some options could be taken from users to understand where the problem was. Social caller app was built on top of this idea, so that anybody calling you, now you know the social media data from where this number is there. The tweet, the Facebook updates can also be shown on your phone. Then we spent a little bit time on location-based social networks and how privacy is a problem in location-based social networks. We talked about Strava, right? Also a location-based social network, also a fitness social network. We delved deeply into the first paper, in details of how you can actually identify a home address, how accurately you can identify. Same thing with another paper where you can identify a home address. Week 11, we did privacy laws around the world. This was a different, I think the week 11 and 12, different perspective, more of the legal stand and the standards topic, which helps in giving a technologist, I'm guessing that some of you are technologists, and hoping that some of you are understand these law and other things better than me in some case. Gives you a sense of the topic of privacy is very complicated, right? Privacy laws around the world, US laws, specifically we saw that US has sectoral specific and widely spread across different topics, health, children, finance. Then we saw Indian context of data protection. That's what this is. Then we went in detail. We looked at the entire document of IT Act 2000 to see where all privacy references are there, amendments, what amendments were made, detail about GDPR, PDP bill, data protection bill, their non-personal data framework. We did. I think it was very, very interesting to go through the details of privacy aspect of all of these laws that we have, acts that we have. There are more. I mean, again, I'm pretty sure if I were to teach a topic on privacy laws, it could be like multiple semester course, I guess, right? What did we cover this week? Summary week. So week 12, standards. Standards we covered, and a specific standard in terms of privacy systems management, privacy information management system. We covered NIST framework and a version of India where there is a draft of privacy standard again. Thank you for attending the course. It was super fun having you part of the course. Yeah, I think these are great ways to connect with students across the country, sometimes even outside the country. I look forward to seeing you sometime in future. If you're around in Hyderabad, feel free to ping, and we should be able to catch up sometime. Hopefully our roads will cross again sometime. Good luck with everything. Bye.